Welcome everyone. I am going to do a demonstration on how to create this marbled crocheted ornament. To begin, you are going to need medium weight yarn. 2 strands will be held together while stitching this pattern. I am using Loops and Threads Petite Pearl. I found this at Michael's Craft Stores. It's a medium weight 4 yarn. I am going to be using a 6.5 hook or a K hook. You will also need a stitch marker. We will be working in continuous rounds, a yarn needle, and a pair of scissors to trim away ends, and finally, a small ornament, glass or plastic, either is fine. You can even repurpose ornaments that you already have if you'd like to update their look, as long as it's a smaller size of the ornament. I found these at the craft store. I got a set of 10 for $4. You also, depending on if you want to put a decorative touch at the top of your ornament, might need some ribbon or twine. I did put a decorative ribbon on top of this, but I will still likely add a hook to this ornament for hanging, just to make it a little bit more secure to the tree, even though these are pretty lightweight. I've also tried this pattern with acrylic yarn to see if it would turn up the same using 2 strands held together. It did. I do prefer this Loops and Threads. It gives it like a Chanel look, and it's got a little bit more give to it. You could try a velvet yarn for sure. Any medium weight yarn. If your tension is a little different than mine, I would just recommend going up a hook size, and you can always add around if needed. This pattern is pretty simple once you get going, very forgiving. It usually takes me about 10 minutes to make one ornament. So let's go ahead and get started. You begin this pattern with a magic ring. So again, we have our 2 strands held together, and I'm going to make a magic ring. If you're newer to crochet or you just don't like the magic ring, go ahead and create a slip knot and chain 2. You can make all of the stitches for round 1 of this pattern into the second chain from your hook doing that method, and it will create a round for you that you continue to work up the pattern in. But I'm going to do a magic ring to start. And then for closing magic rings, we just do a chain 1 to secure our ring. So now I'm going to place 10 half double crochets into the center of my magic ring for round 1. So I'm going to yarn over for a half double crochet, put it into the center of that ring, and pull up the loops. Now, since we're working with 2 strands of yarn held together, instead of having just simple 3 loops on the hook, we're going to have 3 sets of loops for both of those strands. So here's my first set, here's my second set, my third. I yarn over with those working strands and pull them through all of those loops to create my first half double crochet with both of those strands held together. So we're going to do 9 more of those into the center. So by the time we get to the end here, we will have made a total of 10. Okay, here's our last half double crochet into our magic ring, and I'm going to pull those starting tails just to cinch that magic ring closed a little bit. For round 2, we are going to place 1 single crochet, 1 half double crochet, and then follow that with a chain 1 for each stitch in this round. So I'm going to go right into the first half double crochet that I'd placed in the center of my magic ring. This will be the first stitch of round 2, and single crochet. Slide my stitch marker in, half double crochet back into the same stitch, and chain 1. I'm going to repeat that all the way around. So into the next stitch, single crochet, back into the same stitch with a half double crochet, and chain 1. So essentially, we are creating 3 stitches in each stitch around here with the single crochet, the half double crochet, and the chain 1. So by the time we get to the end of round 2, we will have made 30 stitches. Coming up on the last stitch of round 2, so single crochet, half double crochet, and chain 1. To begin round 3, you can see the space here where our stitch marker is. We're going to slip that out. And into that space, we're going to single crochet. That will be our first stitch of round 3. So I'm going to slide my stitch marker in there and half double crochet back into the same stitch. We are not chaining one now. We're just doing the single crochet and the half double crochet. And now for round 3, we're going to work in those chain 1 spaces that we made in the previous round. So you can see we have the space here from our chain 1. We're going to insert our hook into that single crochet, half double crochet. Go into the next chain 1 space, single crochet, half double crochet. Now, since there were 10 chain 1 spaces made in round 2, and we're placing 2 stitches into each one of those with this round, by the time we get to end of round 3, we will have made a total of 20 stitches. So there's the next space, single crochet, half double crochet, into the next space, half double crochet, all the way around. Here's our last chain 1 space. We're back to the beginning. Here's our stitch marker. I'm going to gently push my work in because when we're working in the round, it tends to want to be wrong side out. So I just gently push that. Your starting tails will be on the inside. And for round 4, I'm going to remove my stitch marker, go into that first space where my stitch marker was again, single crochet and half double crochet, because we're doing that sequence for the entire pattern, single crochet, half double crochet in each stitch. Now our spaces come from the skipping of stitches when we were getting into the chain 1 space before. So if you skip the next stitch, you're going to see there's a space here from our skip stitch spaces. So we've done our first single crochet, half double crochet here in the space where our stitch marker was. Now we're going to skip the next stitch and go into that space. And we're going to repeat that for rounds 4 through 8 moving forward. So skip the next stitch, go into that space. By skipping stitches for subsequent rounds, we create the space. We don't need to chain 1. And we're going to end up with 20 stitches at the end of each of these rounds. And once you get going and you're able to feel that skip stitch space, it gets really easy and you just continue on. Since we're working in continuous rounds, as long as your stitch marker is in place, you don't even really have to count much. So let's continue working in those spaces for each round, and we'll meet back here at the end of round 8. Okay, here we are coming to the end of round 8, my last single crochet, my last half double crochet. So before we begin round 9, which is the final round, I'm going to make sure the bottom of my ornament's cinched and just tuck those starting tails all the way down in there. And I'm going to insert my ornament. So I'm going to just get my stitch marker out of the way. You can stretch it a little bit if you want to. And here's my ornament. I'm just going to gently slide it down inside and adjust it so that it's kind of centered in there, because we're going to stitch it closed around the ornament. For round 9, we're going to decrease in single crochets all the way around. So I'm going to slide my stitch marker out of the way, insert my hook into that first stitch, pull up a loop, and then immediately go into the next one and pull up a loop. So I have 3 sets on the hook again. Yarn over with the working strands and pull through all loops on the hook. And what I've done is taken 2 stitches down to 1. So we're decreasing like that all the way around with round 9. So by the time we get to the end of round 9, we will have 10 single crochets, and then we'll close our ornament. So again, I'm going to go up under the stitch, pull up a loop, up under the next one, pull up a loop, and through all 3. Now, I know that when you have an ornament in place, it can be a little bit challenging to stitch around. So just take your time and be careful, and know that this is very forgiving. So when you get back to your stitch marker, if you've accidentally missed a stitch or something and you find that you have 1 stitch left and you can't decrease because you're down to 1 stitch, and it's not a big deal. If that happens, and it has happened to me before, the quick fix, unless you really want to start the round over and see where you dropped the stitch, is to simply slip stitch into that last stitch and fasten off. The result will be the exact same. You won't be able to tell that you dropped one. So decrease around, and again, if for some reason you get to the end and you've dropped a stitch and you don't have, an even number of decreases, because you should, like I said, end with 10 stitches, no big deal. Slip stitch in the last one, fasten off. Okay, here's my last decrease. And we're going to fasten off, leaving myself tails of yarn to weave this closed. I'm going to move my stitch marker, and now my tails of yarn, I'm going to thread my yarn needle. And we're going to whip stitch it closed. So to do that, you simply go up under the next stitch and then back into the next one the opposite direction, back and forth, just whip stitching around the top of the ornament. And when you get to that last stitch, you're going to take those tails and just gently pull, and it cinches right around the top. Take your yarn needle up under some stitches so it's hidden. I go both directions, and I trim away the excess. And there you have it. Now you can decorate the top with some twine or ribbon if you'd like. Here's one done with ribbon. Add a hook if you like, or hang it from the ribbon. And you've completed your set.